Maybe I should go to the Fed. Am I allowed to appoint myself, Doug? I don't know. Am I allowed to appoint myself at the Fed? I do a much better job than these people.
Well, can Trump run the Fed? That's the question. I don't know what to make of it, but I guess that's the times that we are in, right? You're with us here on a fresh new edition of Bazaar Morning Call. We are coming to you from the CNBC TV 18 Moti Rosewal studios. I'm Prashant. Morning. Nigel, morning.
Morning.
I must say, I asked the producers to set this up for us because when he made that statement yesterday, I didn't know whether he was serious, whether it was in jest, because he loves to also theatrics, right?
Yeah.
That's his thing. And he said, I don't know, can I appoint myself to the Fed? I don't know what he's thinking. Can do anything, the man, right?
I wonder if we get a bite from Powell responding to that, you know?
No, I think he knows it's best to be quiet.
Yeah.
Once he retires.
Yeah.
Then his memoirs.
By the way, I remember this conversation with Mark Mobius, and Mark Mobius was, he was very, very serious. He said, it's possible that Trump can fire Powell. If it comes to it, he'll do it. And I said, well, really? You really believe that? He said, yes, it's possible. Nobody's expecting it. It's never been done and no one does it. But, this is Trump, so anything is possible.
He's busy with Khamenei right now, a couple of other missiles. Otherwise.
Well, that's right. So we've got the Fed to deal with.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, is no de-escalation yet in terms of the Iran-Israel war. So that's a bit of a problem. And the fear now is escalation over the next few days. That's a worry.
Absolutely. And actually last night, if you just look at the news flow out of the last 10, 12 hours, what happens is that, as this kind of wears on, like what we've seen with Russia, Ukraine, this is very different. But the point is, general, there are other things competing for attention. And then this kind of sort of becomes simmering right under the hood, even though the situation, as Nigel said, perhaps may escalate, may become more serious, and suddenly it sort of bursts into our attention span. But this is, 7 days now, and last night we basically had some hypersonic missiles coming into entering the conflict, cyber attacks, etc. So, there is escalation. But I'll start with what's top of mind in the sense that the Fed decision and, of course, the Powell commentary last night. I'll start with that. So, little new information is how I'd like to put it. So, the decision was largely widely in line with consensus expectations. The Powell Q&A provided little information as well. And, I was saying this earlier, how can this provide any new information? Because they don't know. The tariffs are supposed to go up. They were 3% when Trump took office. They're average 13%. Will they be 15, 20? No one knows. And that's the big variable here. So little information. So the Fed held rates, 2 cuts seen this year. That is 2 rate cuts, 225 basis point cuts seen this year. And that is market pricing as well. That's, same as what they said last time. But for 2026, they've removed 1 rate cut. So they're now only expecting 1 cut next year. But again, the point is markets do not react in any big way because, 6 months out is too far nowadays. And this is next year, 2026. Who knows? Next meeting they can change. They can put all of that back in terms of rate cuts. Now, markets initially reacted hawkishly, but then it sort of pared back, realizing that a lot can change. And I think that's absolutely the right kind of attitude in times like this. The change on equity screen is up on your screen. Nasdaq up a little bit, the S&P down a little bit, but no real direction. Wix was down sharply, about 7%. Around 20 odd levels is where the Wix, CBOE Wix left off at. 10-year yield unchanged at 4.4%. Actually, it was, if you look at the price action, it was almost as if nothing happened. Dollar index holding just around under 99. Oil prices flattish, 76 and a half odd dollars. So really, not very much at all. Later tonight, that is Thursday, you have U.S. equity and treasury markets which are closed for a holiday. So both both bond markets and equity markets are shut. The other big story, which we were talking about right in the top of the show, is U.S. involvement in Israel-Iran conflict remains top of mind. Will they, won't they, will they enter the fight, etc. There was a Wall Street Journal story which is highlighting that Trump actually approved an attack plan for Iran, which is the U.S. attack plan for Iran, and then withheld the final order. So didn't really go through with it in that sense. So, in terms of really taking stuff away from global markets, not very much. I think the mood largely remains the same. Markets, of course, have been drifting slightly lower, and we are largely in that range. So I just put out the levels here for the market. Nifty, and I put the same that I put out yesterday as well. Support lies at 24,473, which is the lower bound of the range, 25,500, 24,473. And resistance stands at the recent high, which is 24,982. Nifty Bank Support stands at 55,149 and then 54,200. Which is slightly further out, and the resistance is 56,000 and 67 level, the number we put out yesterday as well. GIFT Nifty will give you a quick sense of how we are likely to start, and we'll pick up from there. I think 3 days in a row now, 35, 40 point lower in the GIFT Nifty at 8:05 in the morning. So very, very similar kind of setup once again. Surabhi.
Yeah, absolutely. Markets till now. And some will argue whether there's an element of complacency because the markets have pretty much ignored everything that's happening in West Asia. But I dare say this morning is slightly different. Look at how the Asian screens are reacting. All the markets across Asia are now down and very clearly down. The Hong Kong is lower by 1%. Big markets like Japan are lower as well, almost 1% down there. So pretty much on the lower side. Not just that, look at the dollar this morning. Till yesterday, it was pretty much in a range. It has broken above 99, as we speak this morning. But it hasn't moved up. It's not shot up in any way. The range for June so far has been around 99.20. That's been the top of the dollar index. Let's see if there's any risk premium indeed building, because the crude market is definitely not showing that. The crude market continues to be range. Crude is actually slightly lower this morning as well. Now the developments. The Fed was a bit of a non-event for the market, but as we are seeing some of the reactions across Asia, there is a little bit of uncertainty, and the markets are cognizant of it this morning, unlike the last couple of days. So everyone's waiting to see what the U.S. response is going to be, and if indeed it's going to be a decisive response. What we know is that this national security team did meet for the second time this week in the White House. This meeting started, I think, at around 5 p.m. last evening. And we don't know the outcome as yet, but there's a very clear possibility. In fact, Donald Trump again was speaking about whether the U.S. will get directly involved or not, whether it'll strike those nuclear facilities in Iran. Hear out the man himself, what he's saying on the possibility of U.S. intervention.
You don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. Nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago?
He also went on to say that the Iranians want to come to the White House and talk to us, but that's absurd. How can they come? Because how can they leave and all of that? This was denied by the Iranian side because Iran, the embassy put out a statement saying that, there is no question of negotiating. We've not asked to come to the White House, and that's the last thing we'll do, grovel at the doorsteps of the White House, so on and so forth. So there doesn't seem to be any de-escalation, even verbally. Forget about de-escalation on ground. So we have to wait and watch for this. Coming back to the markets here, and there was that sense of unease that we clearly saw in our market as well, because the whole drift down continued for pretty much the entire day. Let's talk about the flows picture as well. And flows have been patchy. No clear sense of direction coming in. Yesterday, we had a little bit of buying actually from the FPIs, domestic institutions as well, both around 1,000 crores each. In terms of stock action, not too much of local news flow, but I'll definitely watch out for a couple of stocks around the power equipment space, power equipment transmission and distribution, because Siemens, remember Siemens Energy, the arm that was demerged, that is going to list today. And it's very interesting because April 7th, we had that split happen. So it gave us a rough indication of the value of the other business. So that gave us a, dummy price, as it's called, of around 2,500. But the real price discovery is going to happen today in that session, that 45-minute session. And also watch out for, GE, Vernova T&D, Hitachi Energy, because Siemens Energy is going to be the biggest in the space. But these are the other players, and these stocks have done very, very well. So I think it's going to be an interesting space to watch out for today in terms of the local stock price action. Nigel.
Well, I'll tell you what, the biggest fear for the markets is the escalation with regard to what's going on Iran as well as Israel, and the possibility that United States as well, makes an impact on that front. That's the biggest fear. I'll tell you what, that's where the markets are nervous. And because of this sort of nervousness, you're seeing volumes a little bit tepid, and there is unwinding of positions as well that we saw in yesterday's trading session. So if you look at the Nifty as well as the Nifty Bank, open interest was lower, telling you there was some unwinding. Even if you look at both the two largest components of the market, that's participants, the FIs as well as the clients, they as well in yesterday's trading session, they lightened some positions on index futures. Their FIs, though, they continue to remain net short with close to 80% of their positions on the short side. And that's telling you that in case there is some good news, then in fact we'll see a bit of a bounce. But currently the short positioning is at around 80% approximately. What about the moves on the index options? Now, that's going to be important because today is a Thursday, and then obviously you have the weekly expiry that does play out. So both the FIs as well as the clients, they added far more call shots. So that's telling you that in the near term, the bears are getting a little bit more confident. They believe at higher levels, things are protected. And they don't fear that that 25,100 odd mark will be broken in the near term. That's the sense you get looking at the data points. And since today is the weekly expiry, the most active strikes come up for you on the screen. Just take a look at the open interest edition we saw at around 24,800 call, 25,000 call as well. A lot of open interest out there. So just plugging in the levels, since there was some writing on the put side as well, the levels come up for you on the screen. On the upside, we're looking at this 24,950 odd mark. That appears like a resistance zone. This is for today, going by the options data, 24,900, 24,950. Support, though, going by the options data, comes in this vicinity of around 24,680. So that's an important mark. You don't want that mark to get broken. And the 20 DMA, as we mentioned, it's in that ballpark of around 24,800. The Nifty bank, that's important because yesterday it saw a bit of an intraday dip, but actually it ended closer around the 20 DMA. So the bulls, basically, they want to fight back. They don't want this 20 DMA to get broken decisively. So the Nifty bank, like it did yesterday, it was an outperformer. I think it has to play a role because the globe is in a bit of a tizzy. So at that point of time, the Nifty bank's role becomes even more important. Two stocks that I'm looking at, there was an analyst meet for Trent. So I'll keep an eye on that stock. A lot of notes have come out as well. The stock has bounced from the recent low. Can it continue the momentum or will it see some profit taking? Yesterday, the stock was in focus, and in fact, it was a bit of an outperformer. And just till last night, I was thinking, well, there's not going to be a large trade today. Well, there is. IKS, there's a large trade that's taking place. There's a block of around 1.5%, but it's not at a very sharp discount in comparison to yesterday's close price. So I'll keep an eye on this name. That's a stock that's already corrected close to around 20% from the recent peak. That's the other one I'm looking at.
All right, no, absolutely. Lots of sort of interest around that one. IKEA has recently listed with, of course, an interesting top team as well, leading it.